Let's talk about the drugs really quick because I remember that from the movie The Godfather. And again, maybe you can tell me if that movie stands up or if it actually is based in reality. But there's the point where they have the big meeting. I think after Sonny's killed, and they kind of make up, and he just said, no drugs. I don't want you dealing in the drugs. It's bad for business, et cetera, et cetera. Was that really true? Or did people still do it on the side? And then a bigger question than that is, if the mob was still around and if they were running the drug business of today, would it be a different business? Would there be less violence? Would it be, a different kettle of fish?
Well, let me say this, during my era, I was told the night I got made, Halloween night, 1975, you deal in drugs, you die. That's it. We don't deal with drugs in this family. Carlo Gambino, no drugs. Paul Castellano, no drugs. Now, were guys doing it on the side? Yeah, small time. I mean, not even, they couldn't compete in any way with the guys in Mexico or Colombia or anything like that. Not at all. But yeah, guys were doing it on the side. And there was some guys in our life prior to that era that were dealing pretty heavily in drugs. But it was hands off during my time. And look, I had a very dear friend of mine. He was a made guy. I knew him my whole life. He got caught in a small drug deal and was afraid he was going to get walked into a room, and he killed himself. I mean, he was that scared. So, sometimes I get criticized when I say we weren't allowed to be involved in drugs because people online, I'll say, oh, Michael, come on. In my era, drugs were hands off. Some guys were doing it, but they weren't supposed to be doing it. Would we have done it more effectively? I don't know. Look, Brian, there's a fallacy out there that, our first way to rectify something was through violence. That's not true. In our family in Cosa Nostra, murder was very serious. It wasn't something that we did randomly. It had to be approved by the boss. If it was another guy in our family, a made guy, he wasn't there for himself, but basically there was almost a trial held, where people are for it and against it. And then the boss made a decision, and that was the decision, like it or not. So it wasn't something that we were out there randomly killing people. It didn't happen that way. Again, and I say through my experience, my 25 years in the life. Now, obviously, violence is a part of that life, and I'm not gonna say that's not true. Of course, it happens, and it happens often, but it's taken very seriously. So, drugs, because it got the attention of the police, because there is a lot of violence in drug dealing, because there are other groups involved, I think those are the major reasons why we wanted to stay out of it for the most part.
There's that famous line in the movie where, I think Don Corleone says, or maybe it's him, where he says, or maybe it's none of the other bosses, says, the rackets and the prostitution. He said that's something that, the politicians can let slide. But if it's the drugs, it's something they won't let slide. Is there something about that market that goes against kind of the fabric of the family or the fabric of the Cosa Nostra, where it really is like oil and water? It just doesn't really mix for the long term, the way that was set up?
Yeah, and I had discussion because that affects, people's lives individually. It's not like you're taking money off of them. You're putting something in their bodies that's potentially, it could kill them. And look, we did have regard for families and kids. Look, I had a sister who died of an overdose of drugs. My brother was a drug addict for 25 years. I hate anything to do with drugs because I saw we were personally affected by it. So a lot of guys had a conscience with that, and there's other ways to make money. A lot of these other mob family, mob, gangs and stuff out there, if you take drugs away from them, they collapse. That's it. They're drug empires. Take the drugs away, they collapse. We weren't in that position. We control the unions. We had politicians, that we controlled. You control the unions in America, you control the country to a great degree, because politicians rely on you. You call we have the Teamsters. You call a Teamster strike, you stop 2.5 million people from working. Trucks stop. You call a strike at the docks. What happens? Nothing comes in and out of the country. This is powerful stuff. So we had other ways to make money. We were very diverse in that way. We didn't rely on drugs, where these other groups, many of them do.